Welcome to another session with Iridescence Academy's theme-based teaching. And today we are continuing with the theme on establishing healthy boundaries. This is our fourth installment or the fourth session where we are diving into the topic of establishing healthy boundaries. And just to give a quick recap for anyone that is starting off watching this video first, there are three others that we have talked about in the concept or the topic of boundaries themselves. The very first video is where we have talked about the need for establishing healthy boundaries and at what age do we typically start to establish boundaries as a human being, and what are the signs of not having a healthy boundary, because until and unless we are aware that there's something that we need to address, we won't even take the steps to really address it. So we decided to really talk about, how do I know that there's a need to establish healthy boundaries? What are the signs to look forward to? What are the symptoms in my reality that I have to be paying attention to? So we talked about that. And we also talked about, why is it difficult for people to establish healthy boundaries, right? What might be running in our minds? What might be the deep-rooted reason why we find it difficult to establish healthy boundaries in any relationship we may have? And we also, in the very first video, this is all in the first video, we also looked at the universal laws that play a role in helping us, in assisting us in establishing those healthy boundaries. And we also did theta healing activations for all of these specific laws in terms of tapping into that law and leveraging them for our highest and best to establish healthy boundaries. So that was video one. That was the very first video. The second video, we again deep dived into specifically establishing healthy boundaries with your friends, family, your significant other, and your child. Now, again, this particular section was obviously inspired by a book that I have leveraged for this particular teaching called Boundaries by John Townsend and one other individual doctor that I mention as the authors. The book is an inspiration because we looked at what groundwork has already been done in the area of establishing healthy boundaries in terms of your friends, family, your children, and your significant other. What we also did as part of this particular segment is, you know, understanding the difference between disciplining versus punishment. And we also talked about aspects of defining space in a relationship with a significant other. What constitutes my space? What constitutes the other person's space? And what is our space? Getting clear on those aspects. We also talked about certain aspects of downloads of virtues and definitions from the highest perspective using theta healing. We helped get those activations as well. So the primary focus of video 2 is specifically in the aspects of establishing boundaries with friends, family, significant other, and children. Then video 3, we stepped into establishing healthy boundaries at work. Now, a lot of us are in business process, or we're working in an environment like a job or a career or a workplace. And I myself have about 20 years of corporate career experience that I know, and I have seen a lot of these challenges that people have experienced, including myself at some point in my career, learning how to tactfully say no, learning not to take on other people's work as mine, and getting saddled with with others' work and so on. So in this particular third video, we looked at symptoms that related to us primarily, in terms of how we approach work, like spending all my time at work, or I never know what's the difference between important or urgent. I don't know how to prioritize, or I hate authority figures. My workplace is my family. I'm doing someone else's dream job, which is not my dream at all, like all of those aspects. And then the second section, we looked at how our relationship with others in the workplace may also be signs and symptoms of the need to establish healthy boundaries. And I call these boundary busters, which are of different types. They could be those that are critical of us, those that are dumping work on us, those that are negative Nellies, those that take credit for the work that we do. So there's a myriad of those we talked about. And then we, of course, so the third half of that video, the third video on boundaries, we did a bunch of clearing of limiting beliefs on a subconscious level, replacing it with more empowering, powerful, positive beliefs, and did some theta healing activations. So that's just a quick recap of what we have covered so far, just in the 3 videos specific to establishing boundaries. Today, and this particular video, we are going to be finishing that topic with a beautiful conclusion. The conclusion is going to be teaching and learning, teaching as in us learning for ourselves, how to establish those healthy boundaries. So far, we have understood the symptoms, where all do we may have, what type of boundary challenges, and what we may and can do to kind of establish that healthy boundary. This particular segment is all about learning some practical and spiritual techniques to establish that healthy boundary. So as we start off on this topic, I will want to make sure that I give full credit to the technique that I'm using is inspired and taken from Working With You Is Killing Me by Katherine, Crowley, and Kathi Elster. They talk about a 4-step process in their book, which is very work-centric, but you can apply it anywhere. That's why I wanted to generalize this approach. They talk about 4 steps, and I have added a 5th step, which is very specifically working on a spiritual level to address that aspect of learning to draw healthy boundaries. So in that book, Kathi and Katherine have talked about a 4-step process, and I'm going to speak out what those each one are, and then I'll explain which is the 5th one that I was inspired to add. The first step they talk about in establishing healthy boundaries, whether it be, especially with regard to others, right? When we have these negative Nellies, critical co-workers, or those that are dumping work on us, those that don't respect our time. Now, with these scenarios, we're dealing with another individual. So in those specific scenarios at workplace or even at family, there's someone who's constantly criticizing in your family for who you are and what you do. There's someone who's not listening to you. Maybe your child is not listening to you. Your significant other is, turning a blind eye to what you're doing. Whatever those scenarios are, you can use these 5-step technique to get to the point where you are able to establish that healthy boundary. So the first part, we're going to look at this 5-step technique. And the second part, we're going to look at how do I know that I have established healthy boundaries, right? That's the other thing. Just as we need to know that we don't have healthy boundaries, we also need to go back and check whether have I established healthy boundaries. And in the end, we're going to obviously wrap it up with some theta healing electromagnetic activations. So the 5-step process we're going to talk about, first 4 of those inspired by the book Working With You Is Killing Me, is the first step is unhook physically. That's the first step they talk about. And I'm going to go through each one of them with an example. And then we'll finish all of this up from an electromagnetic activation standpoint. So the first step is unhooking physically. Second step is unhook mentally. Third step is unhook verbally. And 4th step is unhook with a business tool if this is a business environment that you're working with. And the 5th step is unhooking spiritually. Okay, so obviously I'm going to share an adaptation. Again, these first 4 steps are straight off the book, but the explanation, the detailing, and the examples are all completely inspired and channeled. So the 5th step, the reason I was inspired to add that is simply because of this. A lot of us have learned growing up, especially if we have been in a professional environment, work environment, we somehow learn these techniques of, of staying away from a person who's negative or toxic. We know how to disconnect. We probably also have learned how to disconnect from them, maybe even saying things verbally. We have taken all those steps. And yet, after years, many, many years, when you think back about that person, your body still starts to react. For example, if you were to think back to any work or personal relationship where someone was really difficult with you, right? Emotionally, physically, mentally, in whatever frame that they were difficult with you, you may have learned how to disconnect, how to physically stay away from them, emotionally not allow them to affect you. Whatever mechanism you've learned to shield yourself, to safeguard yourself, works. You know it works because you've grown through that process. However, the minute you think about that person, your body somewhere starts to react, respond. You either get agitated or your blood starts to feel, hot, closing to the boiling point sometimes. And makes you uncomfortable. And the reason is because we have taken care of it on all these other levels, which is the physical, mental, emotional levels, and sometimes even verbally. However, we may not have addressed it spiritually. There is still remnant resentment, there's still remnant hatred, there's still this, ew, I don't want anything to do with this. I don't even want to think about it. That very response that we have at any of these levels when we think about that person says that we still haven't really completed that disconnection on some level. And clearly, because we have now, in this particular step by step technique, we are learning how to unhook physically, mentally, verbally, and with the business tool. We're also now going to learn how to unhook spiritually, because that process, and I'm going to walk us through a meditation that can then allow us to be truly free from any sort of connection to that person or the way they have behaved with us moving forward. Okay, so that's why I was inspired to clearly add that as a key step in the process. So let's take the first step, unhooking physically. Now, before I step into each of these, I'm going to actually take a fictitious example. Okay, and I've chosen a work example simply because the fourth step of unhooking with a business tool really allows for us to use the example to explain how you would use a business tool. Okay, I am going to also draw a parallel to a non-work example in that fourth step. What other tool can you use on a personal experience, a personal life level? Because work, it's easy in some sense because you have an HR person you can go to, or you can use some other organizational techniques to address this unhooking, so to speak. But on the personal front, you may not have thought about something equivalent. So we'll talk about that as well in step 4. Okay. But the example I'm going to walk us through all these 5 steps is going to be a work example. So let's say you're working in a team environment. You're in a job, you're working a full-time job or a contract job, you're in a team environment. You and your team of, let's say, 6 others have to deliver a work package. Okay. Every week you have to deliver something as a team. Now you have one person in your team. Let's name that fictitious character Simba. Why? Because that's the name I got. So let's go with it. Now Simba is one of your team member, and Simba takes on work, but he never completes his work in the time frame that it is meant to be completed in. So every week, at the end of the week, towards the last day, you find out that Simba has not finished the work that you as a team have to complete. Your organization, your company is expecting each of you to be completing the stuff that you said you will do, but you are working as a team. So for your team to deliver something to the client, everybody has to finish their work, and Simba is not. Simba always takes on work that he doesn't finish. And what happens is you find that out on a Friday morning that he's behind, and then one of you in the team step in and you end up working over hours because you have your own stuff to do on Friday and you're taking on Simba's stuff to do. So whoever is a little ahead of the game in terms of getting the work done is taking his work and addressing it so that come end of Friday, you still got what you need to deliver to the client. Okay, so this is what has been going on. This has been going on for like 4 months now. And you specifically, let's take each of us as the you in this scenario, you've had it. You're like, I'm done with this. I'm not going to do overtime because someone can't get their act together, right? You're like, you are up in your arms. You're like, I'm so done with this. You're frustrated. You want to put an end to this. So now you're ready. Let's say that's the scenario we're taking as an example. And we're going to walk us, each of us, the you in this example, through the step-by-step process to really get that accomplished. Okay, the first step, when you unhook physically, you are basically clearing your energy on a physical level. So if you're already triggered, let's assume this is Friday, and Friday morning, you have decided to have this conversation on a Friday, the last day the work package has to be delivered, knowing that you don't want to be in the same place next Friday. So you decided to keep it on a Friday and you are already charged emotionally. You just had a conversation and you heard the same thing again that Simba didn't finish his work. Okay. So first thing we're going to do when we need to have a conversation in terms of unhooking is we got to first physically disconnect from the person, from our environment. That's the unhook physical part. You have to clear your energy physically means step away from wherever this person is in your physical space. Get away from it, go for a walk, go for a run, go run on a treadmill, whatever you need to do to physically separate yourself from that environment. That's the first step. And anytime you physically unhook, it is allowing you the opportunity for two things. One, it's allowing you to stay away from that environment so that you can really stop its influence on you. The second thing it does when you go for a walk, run, or even throwing cold water on your face, right? These are all quick ways by which you can really unhook physically, or even my favorite, which is closing your eyes and taking 4 or 5 deep breaths, grounding, centering ourselves, right? Those of us that are tuned into meditation, this should be a no-brainer. Even though I say that I will vouch for the fact that the days I work out, man, I feel amazing because it really moves my energy. The blood flows and I feel energized. I feel rejuvenated, right? So that's really what we're doing here. We are clearing physically any tightness, any stress that we feel. We're releasing it through any of these techniques, throwing water on our face, going for a run, jogging, gymming, or just taking a few breaths, silent, close breath, or swimming, whatever energizes you. And the reason we do this is it also calms our nervous system. Okay. So that's what you do. You decide to hit the gym that evening or early that morning so that you can do a few rounds of treadmill to clear your energy physically. First step. Second step is unhook mentally. Now, this is where it is so important for us to get clear on the mind level, the rational mind, right? We want to make sure that there is a complete clarity on what exactly is going on in this particular scenario. Okay, here we are really getting clear about getting real and factual about the scenario. Okay, so this means we are looking to catch the story we are telling ourselves. Meaning, anytime we have a reaction, emotionally or otherwise, we are going to be we are probably doing that because there's some story running in our head. So the best way to get unhooked mentally is to start journaling. Okay. So again, if you are watching this live, comment and let me know if you have a practice of journaling, because that's what we are talking about here. Is when you are journaling, it involves you writing down answers to a few very specific questions. Okay. Another reason why we journal is because it's going to take all our stuff that's running in our head. Oh my gosh, again, he didn't do this. He again slacked. He again delayed the work. That's stuff you're running in your head and it's resulting in an emotional body reaction, right? What you're really doing in the process of journaling is taking all that mind chatter and dumping it in a way that'll start to make sense. Really meaningful stuff needs to come out of it. So here's what we're going to do for that. We're going to start by asking a few questions. The very first question to ask is, what exactly is happening here between me and this person? Okay, we're going to ask that. And I'm going to give you the answers to this in the example that we are playing with for this particular exercise, right? So what exactly is happening here between me and this person? So in our example, what is exactly happening? Simba is not delivering on a weekly basis. His delivery is impacting our team's ability to deliver to the customer, which means our team's productivity collectively. And he's just not getting it. That's what is happening. Okay. Just explaining the scenario because it's been 4 months now and he doesn't seem to realize it. Maybe the better way to put it, he doesn't seem to realize it, right? That's the way I'm going to word what exactly is happening here. Okay. He is not understanding that his delay is impacting things. He is constantly delayed. And what is happening here between me and this person? I am getting agitated. Okay. I'm getting affected by this. So the next question to ask is, what are the facts? This is where we learn how to separate the story as to what we are saying. If you say this person has no interest in work, they're slacking, this is all us drawing conclusions. So we want to isolate the fact from what it is that our stories that we have fabricated or fabricating in our minds, right? So the second question to write down about is, what are the facts here? Simba takes on work every week and does not complete it on time as expected. His work ends up being taken away by somebody, having to be taken by somebody else to complete. That's the only fact. The reality of the situation is the person has been given some work and the person is not finishing that work. Somebody else is having to step in and finish that work. Simple facts, no conclusions, no, no judgments, nothing. It's what's really going on, right? What are the facts? The third question we ask is, what is the other person's role in this event? Okay. Now, in this case, Simba's role is the person is not finishing the work. Either the person is taking on more than they can handle, or they don't know how to finish the work, or they don't care to finish the work. It's one of these possibilities. The fact remains that the person is not finishing the work. Their role in this event is they're not doing anything about it. They don't seem to be affected by the fact that they're not finishing the work. And we don't know what it is that's stopping them from finishing the work. Is it the attitude, which I call this the will issue, or the skill issue? Will issue means the person has I don't care attitude. Skill issue means they don't have the right skills to do the job. So they're always ending up delayed in their work, or they're not finishing it as expected, right? So their role is that they are not finishing it. And we have talked about this before to Simba in the 4 months that this has transpired, and he's still not doing anything about it. Okay, that's really the other role, is that it's not that he's not aware that his work is getting delayed and impacting the productivity, but he's also not doing anything about what feedback has been given to him. Now, the fourth question is, what is my role in this event? Okay, because I'm getting triggered, I'm getting affected. So what is my role? Now, this is the place where most of us have the hardest time. In any situation where there's a conflict, this is a great way to journal and find out what's my role in this event. Now, in this example, I step in to cover for him. In the 4 months, which is 4 times 4, 16 weeks that this has happened, 8 weeks I have stepped in and covered for him. And I'm frustrated. What's my role? I step in. I am choosing to step in and cover for his work. And as a result, he's not paying for his lack of productivity. And instead, I'm getting resentful. I'm resentful that I'm having to pick up his slack, his work that is not completed. So that's my role. I am choosing to pick up his work and I'm feeling resentful about it. That's the honest explanation statement of what's my role in this. Okay. And then comes the next question, which again is a very, very important question, is what do I really want? This is a very, very important, but a very equally somewhat difficult or a tricky thing for us to do. What is it that I really want for myself, for the other person, and for the relationship? This is so important to nail down. Okay. Again, this is not one of the steps in Working With You is Killing Me book, but I found this step very relevant from another book called Crucial Conversations. Okay. So getting the answer to this is very important. What do I want really for myself, this person, and for the relationship that we have going on? Now, for this, in the example I'm walking us through, for myself, I don't want to pick up his work. That's what I want. I want to do my stuff. I don't want to have to pick up his work last minute because my boss is asking me or the team is saying, hey, we got to get this done. Okay. That's what I want. I really don't want to do his work. Two, what do I want for him? I want him to be able to take up what he can do and deliver to it so that nobody else is saddled with his work. That's what I want for him. Okay. What do I want for the relationship? I want to be able to explain or convey this in a way that Simba is not resentful, upset, or taking it in a way that will make it harder for us to work together, right? I want to maintain that relationship where he feels like he's part of the team, yet he should understand that his lack of delivery is impacting all of us. So for the relationship, I want that relationship of the team spirit to stay with us, the bond to be there. Okay. This gets it very, very clear for us that I'm not going to go, rough edge with this person just because I'm so done with this behavior, but I want to come from a place of heart-centeredness, of maintaining a healthy relationship. Okay. Now, the last question you're going to answer, this is all still part of Unhooking Mentally. Okay. The last question we're going to answer is, what are my alternatives as an action step? What can I do? What all can I do? Okay. So I can stop picking up the slack. Well, if I don't do it, somebody else is going to pick it up in the team, because that's really not the answer I'm looking for. So that's one option. Two, we got to make him, we got to make sure we sit him down, we truly have a heart-centered conversation to find out where really is the problem. Is it a skill issue, will issue, or what issue is it? And see how we can help him. And the last option I have, because it's a work environment, is if he doesn't still fix his behavior, is to go seek help from a coach or a HR person, right? Those are my options. So in a work situation, it becomes pretty straightforward. I didn't want to intentionally pick a personal life example for this steps of unhooking physically, mentally, verbally, with a business tool and spiritually, because some of these may be somewhat limited, or some of these may be a bigger ticket decision from a personal life standpoint. But all these steps are still valid for any relationship whatsoever that you're having to handle the boundary challenge or looking to establish a healthy boundary. Now, that's our step 2. So we have talked about unhook physically, unhook mentally. Now we're going to go to step 3, which is unhook verbally. Here, this is where in the first video, we did the download of law of self-expression, the activation, energy, electromagnetic activation of that what it feels like to express yourself, the ability to say no. We had activated the ability to say no, or even express how we feel in scenarios where we feel our boundary is challenged, right? So that's really what it comes down to in this section, is really us tapping into our ability to speak our truth and self-express. Is until somebody says what is okay or not okay with they're okay with, we won't know, because what's okay for me may not be okay for you. So it's important to express. So in this step, there are 2 parts to it. First step is self-talk. Okay, that's where we prepare what it is that we want to share with the other person. And 2 is where we end up sharing. So first is us preparing ourselves. Second step is where we end up acting on that preparation. So the first step is basically us preparing ourselves from a place of heart-centeredness, right? The question we ask ourselves is, how would I like to receive this message if I am on the receiving end, right? It is so beautiful because it allows you to step into the place of empathy and compassion for the other person first, and say, if I was in Simba's position and if this is what I am receiving about my work, how would I like to receive it, that I am able to be receptive to what I need to receive, right? That's going to allow us to prepare. And the second part is where we are actually conveying it to Simba or to this person. Now, the second part requires courage and discernment on how to say and what it is that we want to say, again, coming from our heart, not from a place of ego. Okay. So in this example, we prepare ourselves and we meet with Simba and say, Simba, we've noticed as a team that we are collectively committing to work that that we are not able to meet because some of us are not finishing our work on time, resulting in some others having to do overtime. And part of the reason is because the work that's not completed by you is having to be picked up by somebody else. And we can't continue like this. So we want to understand what it is that seems to be a challenge for you. That this, we are seeing this, pick up the facts, like week 1, week this happened, week 2, this happened, week 3, this has happened. So we're seeing a consistent pattern of your work not getting completed in time. If you're having this one-on-one, you're going to say, I want to see how I can help. And help not only you, but the team, because many of us are having to step in and take care of the work that you are unable to finish. So help us understand, or help me understand, is this a challenge with the training that is required, or do you think there's something else? Or do you feel like you're in the right job? What is it that we can do to help you help us, or help us help you? Either way, right? So it's coming from a place of heart, and this is where sometimes you may not always have the opportunity to express it so succinctly. Sometimes I've had to fire a person from a job once in my career, and I'm grateful it was just once, and I had to say it as it was. I just had to pick up all the facts and say, this is what happened, this is what happened, this is what happened. We even put you on a performance improvement plan, but nothing unfolded. So we are having to let you go because I think we feel you're better suited for something else somewhere else. So the reason I'm sharing this is because these are opportunities for growth, to tap into the innate courage coming from a place of heart-centeredness to say maybe that person is better off somewhere else. This is, the divine's way of guiding us to be the person who's choosing to let them go so that they can be free to do what they're meant to do. Okay. So that's step three. Step four is where we are clearing energy with the tools. And in this case, it could be a business tool in a business workplace. It's easy in that sense because once you have agreed, had this conversation, let's say Simba says, you know what, you're right. I don't seem to know how to use these tools that we are using for our work. I think I might benefit with training because I spent about 7 hours just figuring the tool. In any given week, I'm spending 7 hours just figuring the tool. Okay, great. So let's get you trained. So here's what we do. We take, after the conversation, we go back and we write an email formalizing, saying this is what we discussed. You agreed that there is a training challenge or a tool challenge. So we're going to focus on getting you help to get trained, etc., etc. Right? So there's documentation. And if you are choosing to disconnect from the person completely, which means if a person is, um, disregarding your personal space at the office. We talked about that in the boundaries at work. If somebody is coming into your cubicle and dirtying it up and walking away because they're using your cubicle when you're not around, and you've given them enough warnings, this is a great way. After having a conversation, you're going to send them a formal email saying, "Hey, we've talked about this. I do not, I do not appreciate nor allow from a permission standpoint for you to use my office space because I don't feel comfortable about it. I want to make sure that that's fully formally communicated via an email." So we have tools that we can leverage to follow on from a verbal conversation standpoint um, with that of an email or a contract or a letter or whatever that is. On the personal life, however, this is where it gets a little tricky that many of us that have grown up or have been exposed to a very traditional way of personal relationships, taking help is not a very common thing, and that's one of the things we need to bust through as well, which is when let's say a spouse, a husband and wife, or a couple, they can't seem to get along with each other. No matter what, the years of just each other trying to change each other hasn't worked. This is where, when you have a verbal conversation, sometimes even going and seeking help from a neutral party like a counselor or a therapist or a community group helps kind of bring that neutral energy to the discordance that exists between two people. And maybe that you leveraging that as a tool is an option as well. And many people these days, opt for other ways of maintaining a marital agreement in the form of a pre or a post nuptial agreement. Again, I am someone who views everything very neutrally. So this is even coming up in this particular conversations because we're talking about establishing healthy boundaries. So sometimes penning down what is okay, what's not okay, what's non-negotiable, what's negotiable, especially on the financial aspect, sometimes just eases the stress between couples, the ambiguity as well. So for what it's worth, it's coming through as something to share. So I'm just going to offer that as an option to getting clear with tools that are available for us. And the last step is clearing your energy spiritually. This is where I talked about when once we have taken care of all the others, physical, mental, verbal, and tool based, we want to make sure, especially if we are continuing to stay with a person by choice, or even if we have disconnected from the person fully and completely, but are still holding remnant energy about who they are and how they treated us, this is a great way. Here we're going to walk through a meditation, and I'm going to do that with you right now. And what we're going to visualize is, moving the energy that you usually end up having like a light cord that goes between two people. And typically in relationships where there has been power struggle, that cord is between the solar plexus. Solar plexus is right about your belly area. That's really where the cords get connected. And that's where power struggles really happen. In this meditation, we're going to witness those cords being lifted up to the heart centers as we are connected at the hearts. And we're also going to, if this person has been very toxic and abusive for any of us that is surfacing up, you're welcome to cut the cord, visualize cutting the cord if that's what you're guided to and you feel comfortable doing. You're welcome to do that. And then we are going to thank this person for offering you a lesson on boundaries. And we're going to close the contract with this individual or individuals. And we're going to just witness releasing any and all psychic hooks that may still be in your energy space from this individual. And we're going to release any and all resentment and um, revenge if that surfaces up, and or regrets. We're going to just witness release of all of this into light. Okay, so that's really what we're going to be looking to do as part of a mini meditation. Then we're going to go into how we know we have established healthy boundaries and doing a few activations as guided.